Welcome the Lord's chosen. Every system pays eventually, either in silence or in settlement. Most people think money moves because someone worked harder, prayed longer, or waited politely for their turn. That's a comforting story. It keeps people calm, but it isn't how the world actually works. Money moves when pressure builds, when structures crack, and when accountability finally becomes cheaper than avoidance. Courts don't rule because they're emotional. They rule because something ran out. Time, excuses, or the ability to keep pretending nothing was owed. Here's a quiet fact most people never hear. The longest financial delays are rarely caused by lack of funds. They're caused by advantage. Someone, somewhere, benefits when payment is postponed. That's why processing can take months, approvals can disappear, and promises can age like milk. Delays are not accidents, they are strategies, and strategies collapse the moment they stop serving the people who designed them. What makes this moment different is not that help is coming, it's that the cost of not paying you finally became too high. When systems realize it's more expensive to resist than to release, rulings happen. Not loudly, not ceremonially, just efficiently. Paper gets signed, numbers move. Someone sighs heavily in an office you've never been inside. And yes, someone is absolutely paying a price. Just not the dramatic movie kind. No handcuffs, no speeches, just a slow, painful adjustment as power shifts hands. Think less courtroom drama and more awkward budget meeting where your name suddenly becomes a problem line item. This isn't about luck. It's about math catching up to ego. It's about patience outlasting manipulation. And it's about realizing that when the court finally rules in your favor, it's not because you begged well. It's because someone else ran out of room to keep playing games. So if things feel strangely quiet right now, good. That's usually the sound systems make right before they settle accounts. Number 1. The ruling wasn't spiritual, it was structural. What happened in your favor didn't come from the universe finally noticing you. It didn't arrive because you said the right words or stayed positive long enough. It happened because a structure failed. A system that was built to delay you, underpay you, or keep you waiting finally reached its breaking point. And when structures break, outcomes change fast. People like to spiritualize outcomes because it feels cleaner. It feels nicer to believe money comes when you're aligned. But the truth is more uncomfortable and far more powerful. Money moves when systems can no longer sustain the imbalance they created. Someone ran out of room to keep pushing you back. Someone ran out of excuses. Someone ran out of protection. That's when rulings happen. Structural shifts are quiet. There's no announcement, no warning text, no dramatic apology, just a sudden change in tone. The same people who moved slowly now move efficiently. The same process that was complicated becomes very simple. That's not magic, that's pressure finally doing its job. You didn't break the system by force. You broke it by staying present longer than it expected. Most systems are designed assuming people will quit, explode, beg, or walk away. You didn't. You stayed steady, you stayed functional, you stayed watchful, and that alone destabilizes weak structures. This is why the ruling feels strange. There's no emotional release, no big... Number 2, your patience turned into leverage. Patience is often misunderstood as passivity, a quiet waiting that feels invisible and unproductive. But real patience, the kind that lasts through repeated delays and silent setbacks, is a weapon. Every moment you stayed calm while others rushed, complained, or demanded attention, quietly built power around you. Time wasn't just passing, it was working for you, transforming your endurance into influence that no argument, no bribe, no shortcut could ever replicate. When you are patient, you do something most people can't. You create scarcity. scarcity of attention, scarcity of credibility, scarcity of presence. People start to notice when someone who could have walked away didn't. They realize that your stillness is not weakness. It's a silent assessment, a test that they failed long before any court ruling arrived. By simply holding your place, your patience forced the world to acknowledge your value. What they delayed, they eventually had to respect. What they ignored, they eventually had to pay for. That's leverage. Patience also exposes character, yours and theirs. While others panic, overreact, or scheme, you gather evidence in the form of consistency. You accumulate quiet victories that no one else sees. The decisions you didn't take too early. The conversations you didn't overpush. The mistakes you didn't make because you waited. That collection of restraint becomes a quiet pressure on the system around you. Suddenly the people who tried to block you are the ones bending, adjusting, and recalculating to account for your presence. And when the ruling finally comes, it's not surprising. It's the natural outcome of patience turned into influence. The system didn't reward you because you waited. It was forced to respond because your patience had already become a form of control. Your ability to endure became their problem. The moments that felt wasted weren't wasted at all. They were building invisible leverage that demanded recognition, demanded restitution, and demanded payment. Patience isn't about waiting politely. It's about quietly bending reality to your side, one measured moment at a time. When leveraged correctly, it is the power that outlasts noise, outlasts panic, and finally forces the world to pay attention on your terms. Number 3, someone benefited from you being unpaid until now. Delays are rarely neutral. Every day your payment was stalled, someone else was quietly profiting from it. That's the uncomfortable truth most people ignore. Systems are rarely designed to hurt you for no reason. They are designed to benefit someone, and often that someone gains while you wait, sweat, or strategize in silence. Your patience and work became invisible fuel for someone else's comfort, and that arrangement worked perfectly. For them. Until now. Being unpaid isn't just a financial problem. It's a leverage problem. Someone somewhere had the ability to settle, to honor agreements, or to take responsibility, but they chose to stretch the process because it gave them an advantage. Maybe it kept them ahead. Maybe it maintained a sense of control. Maybe it simply allowed them to prioritize their convenience over your needs. In every stalled payment, in every "we'll get to it" reply, the system quietly rewarded the people who were comfortable with you waiting. They didn't think about consequences. They only thought about their gain. What makes this moment extraordinary is the shift. The same structures that allowed them to profit at your expense are now forcing them to pay the price. The balance that was once silently in their favor has tipped, and it is tipping fast. Money moves not because generosity finally kicked in, but because maintaining the delay became unsustainable. The cost of ignoring what was owed to you exceeded the benefit of keeping it. That's why rulings like this happen. They're not about fairness or morality. They're about efficiency catching up with greed. And now, the people who enjoyed the benefits of your delay are facing the consequences. That's the quiet, almost invisible justice of it all. Someone who once thrived on your absence, your delay, and your silence now finds that same absence demanding payment. The ledger has shifted. The balance has been recalculated. The cost of their advantage is finally being settled, and your reward is the unavoidable result. No one applauds the invisible labor you carried or the patience you held, but systems cannot ignore the weight of consequence. And the person who benefited from your delay, they're paying in ways that are just as real as the money coming to you. Number 4, the payment is restitution, not reward. What's coming to you isn't a gift, a bonus, or some token of appreciation. It's restitution. That subtle distinction changes everything. A reward celebrates effort, skill, or achievement. Restitution, on the other hand, acknowledges what was taken, overlooked, or delayed, and it usually arrives without fanfare, speeches, or public approval. Restitution doesn't ask for gratitude. It simply corrects a wrong. The money finally moving your way is a tangible acknowledgement that the system owes you and that someone's mismanagement or negligence has reached its natural limit. Most people misunderstand why restitution feels different. It doesn't come with the warm glow of, "You earned this." Instead, it often arrives quietly, sometimes anticlimactically, because the system doesn't need to celebrate your endurance. It simply needs to balance the scales. What you endured, what you waited for, what you carried silently is being acknowledged in the most direct way possible, by paying what is owed. There's no ceremony, no hero narrative, because the point isn't to praise, it's to settle accounts. Restitution also carries an uncomfortable truth. Someone somewhere is paying for the delay. Behind the calm paperwork, the approvals, the transfers, there's tension, calculations, and consequences. The comfort, advantage, or control they once held while you waited has been interrupted. Money moving to you isn't just a gain for you, it's a loss for them, a necessary adjustment that reflects the cost of ignoring your value. Restitution never travels alone. It is the echo of consequence. And that's why this moment feels heavier than reward. It's not meant to feel celebratory. It's meant to feel real. It's the system acknowledging what you already knew. Your patience, your labor, and your presence were worth far more than was allowed. The money finally reaching you is simply the ledger catching up with reality. Restitution doesn't applaud, it corrects. It doesn't reward, it balances. And in that balance, the invisible weight of everything you endured is finally recognized, undeniable and uncompromising. Number 5. The system didn't apologize, it adjusted. One of the most striking truths about life, especially when money and justice are involved, is that systems rarely apologize. They don't pause, acknowledge wrongdoing, or express regret for the delays and obstacles they created. What they do is adjust. That's exactly what happened here. The court ruling, the money moving your way, the correction of imbalance. It's not a public confession or an emotional admission. It's a calculated recalibration. Systems don't have feelings, they have limits. And once those limits are reached, adjustments happen, quietly and efficiently. Adjustments don't come with explanations. They don't offer moral satisfaction. They simply shift the scales in ways that correct errors, enforce rules, or settle accounts. The system doesn't recognize your patience as noble or your endurance as heroic. It recognizes that the cost of keeping things as they were has become higher than the cost of paying what is owed. That's why the ruling lands like a silent, unstoppable force. No one cheered for it. No one crafted it to honor you. But it works precisely because it restores balance. The beauty and the sting of this moment lie in its impersonal nature. It isn't personal vindication. It's a structural reality asserting itself. Someone's advantage evaporates, someone's delay can't continue, and the consequences are redistributed. Your money arrives, not because anyone has had a change of heart, but because the system has a limit, and it reached that limit. Understanding this shifts perspective entirely. You don't need gratitude from anyone, and you shouldn't expect apologies. The adjustment alone is proof that the wrong has been recognized and corrected. Everything else, resentment, relief, satisfaction, is secondary. What matters is that the ledger has been balanced, the cost accounted for, and the flow of justice, cold and inevitable, finally reached you. Systems are not sentimental, they are precise. And in this precision, Your due has been delivered. Number 6. The price isn't paid in cash alone. When the ruling comes and the money moves your way, it's easy to see only the figures, the digits finally landing in your account. But that's only half the story. The cost of this correction isn't just financial. Someone else is paying in ways you'll never see, ways that are quiet but deeply felt. Money is merely the visible evidence of a broader reckoning. Reputation, credibility, influence, control. These are the invisible currencies being spent behind the scenes, and they often hurt far more than dollars ever could. The person or entity that delayed you, stalled processes, or benefited from your absence now faces consequences that go beyond the bank. There's tension in meetings, sleepless nights, awkward calculations, and the quiet acknowledgement that they misjudged someone they thought was powerless. The ledger balances, but the entry doesn't stop at numbers. It continues into stress, loss of authority, and the subtle panic that comes when someone realizes they underestimated the cost of underestimating you. What makes this so profound is that it forces a kind of fairness that's unavoidable. They can't undo the adjustment, ignore it, or pretend it didn't happen. Cash settles one side of the equation, but the psychological, professional, and social costs ripple through the other side. Systems have a way of making this precise. Someone loses, someone gains, and the truth of what was owed finally manifests in multiple dimensions. This is why the moment feels heavier than it looks. Your account may reflect dollars, but the world around you is recalibrating quietly, almost invisibly. People are adjusting, plans are shifting, reputations are reconsidered, and strategies are rethought. That's the real price being paid. The money is proof, yes, but it's also a reminder that every delay has a consequence, and every advantage has a cost. When the system finally acts, it collects its full payment, visible and invisible alike. And in that total cost, your due is finally undeniable, comprehensive, and uncompromising. Number 7. You were audited without your consent. Long before the ruling reached you, before the money even started moving, there was a quiet assessment happening, one you never saw and didn't ask for. Every action you took, every detail of your work, every interaction and decision was being watched, measured, and evaluated. Systems don't operate blindly. They rely on invisible audits, calculations, and comparisons to determine who is owed what, who can wait, and who cannot. You weren't just waiting for a ruling, you were under scrutiny whether you knew it or not. This audit wasn't formal, it wasn't polite, and it certainly didn't come with explanations. It was precise, impersonal, and relentless. Your consistency, your patience, your ability to endure delays without breaking became data points. Every moment you stayed steady, every time you refused to compromise or beg, strengthened your position. The system was collecting evidence, not opinions. It doesn't care about narratives, it cares about measurable reality. And by the time the verdict came, the data had already spoken louder than any argument could. The invisible nature of this scrutiny is what makes the eventual ruling so powerful. You never realize that each quiet effort, each silent step forward, was contributing to a record that demanded recognition. The people who delayed you, ignored you, or underestimated you thought the audit didn't exist, that your persistence was invisible. But persistence is the most dangerous kind of evidence. It accumulates silently, quietly bending the scales until correction becomes inevitable. By the time the system acted, the assessment was complete. Your patience, skill, and endurance had been recorded in ways that no resistance could erase. The money that finally comes to you is more than payment. It's confirmation of the unseen evaluation that placed you squarely on the side of justice. And the people who once thought they could control or delay the outcome are now confronted with the consequences of that audit. The truth, quietly measured and relentlessly precise, has always been on your side. Number 8. You outgrew the people who delayed you. There's a quiet, almost invisible shift that happens when someone who has been held back starts to grow beyond the limitations imposed on them. While you were waiting, while others were deciding when, if, or how to honor what was owed to you, something else was happening. You were expanding, not in flashy ways, not in ways that demanded attention, but in ways that matter far more. Your knowledge, your resilience, your understanding of value, your sense of timing, and your ability to endure. You grew while others remained stagnant, and growth has a way of changing relationships quietly but irreversibly. The people who delayed you weren't malicious for the sake of malice. Often they simply underestimated the cost of holding someone back. They assumed the pause would break you, that their control over timing would keep you in a smaller space. But growth doesn't ask permission. It isn't bound by schedules, delays, or excuses. By the time the court ruling arrived, you weren't the same person they tried to contain. You had evolved in ways that made their delay irrelevant. Your patience, your persistence, and your quiet accumulation of leverage had transformed you into someone who couldn't be ignored, postponed, or diminished anymore. This is why the ruling doesn't feel like a favor. It feels inevitable. You weren't rewarded because someone finally noticed you. You were recognized because your growth exceeded the capacity of others to resist or postpone justice. Their attempts to hold you back became a liability to them. You outgrew the very structures and people that once seemed to define your limits. Outgrowing someone is subtle. It's not always dramatic, and it's rarely acknowledged by those who are left behind. But it changes power dynamics completely. When the ruling comes, when the money finally reaches you, it's not just a financial settlement. It's proof that patience, endurance, and consistent growth eventually render resistance futile. The people who delayed you are no longer capable of containing your trajectory. You have moved past them, and the world is adjusting accordingly. The scales have shifted, and your evolution has quietly forced recognition. Number 9, this ruling closes doors permanently. When the court finally rules in your favor and the money moves, it doesn't just open one door, it closes several that once defined your environment. Some opportunities, some relationships, some spaces that tolerated delays and compromise simply cannot exist anymore. The people who once relied on your patience or on your delayed compliance now face a new reality. Your presence can no longer be taken for granted, and that changes everything. What was once accessible through manipulation, stalling, or underestimation is now permanently off limits. This is the invisible cost of fairness. Systems, and the people who exploit them, cannot revert once the scales shift. Some connections fracture not because of anger, but because the leverage you once held over by absence and delay has dissolved. Influence, authority, and control are recalculated quietly, leaving behind relationships that were contingent on imbalance. The ruling doesn't negotiate these dynamics, it simply enforces them. The world adjusts to the new equation, and some doors simply stay closed. There's a subtle intensity to this. You may feel relief and satisfaction, but that relief carries the weight of permanent change. People who once had access to your time, energy, or resources are now operating in spaces where you decide the terms. The old way of doing things is gone, and that's exactly how power corrects itself. When the system acts, it doesn't restore the past, it enforces the new reality. This permanent closure is often misunderstood as loss, but it's actually proof of movement. It's proof that your value is no longer negotiable, that your time and effort are finally recognized as essential, and that the structures and people who once delayed you can no longer operate the same way around you. The ruling is both an arrival and a departure. Your due has been delivered, and the old dynamics that kept you waiting have quietly exited. Doors close not to punish, but to make space for the inevitable shift in power, influence, and recognition that the court has just cemented. Number 10. The money arrives with expectations. When the ruling delivers what's owed to you, it's tempting to think of it as pure relief, a reward, or even freedom. But the truth is more complex and more compelling. The money doesn't arrive as comfort. It arrives with responsibility. Systems, courts, and agreements don't just correct mistakes for fun. They correct them because someone's actions or inactions created imbalance. And the resolution comes with expectations that are often silent but unavoidable. When the funds finally reach your hands, the world immediately recalibrates what it expects from you, even if subtly. This isn't about pressure in the conventional sense. It's about alignment with reality. Money in this context is a tool, not a trophy. It represents authority, influence, and accountability. The system doesn't simply settle debts. It signals that you now have the power, resources, and platform to act differently, to make moves that were impossible while waiting. The expectation isn't a threat. It's a logical consequence of what has shifted. You are no longer a passive participant. You are now a recognized force that cannot be ignored. Understanding this changes how you see the moment. Receiving what is owed doesn't erase past delays or frustrations. It reframes them. The same people who once ignored deadlines, delayed approvals, or undervalued your contributions are now forced to recognize your elevated position. They anticipate action, clarity, and influence from you, whether openly or quietly. The court didn't just deliver money. It created a new landscape where your decisions, presence, and timing matter more than ever. This is the subtle gravity of justice in motion. Money is tangible, but influence and expectation are invisible, and they travel alongside it. How you handle what arrives determines not only the trajectory of your life, but also the respect and recognition you will command moving forward. The ruling isn't the end of a story. It's the starting point of a new one, where resources arrive not as a gift, but as a mandate, to act, to decide, and to navigate a world that now recognizes your value and expects it to shape outcomes. Number 11. Your name now carries weight in rooms you've never entered. One of the quiet, almost invisible shifts that happens when the court finally rules in your favor is how your presence starts to matter far beyond your immediate surroundings. You don't need to walk into a room, speak a word, or assert authority for people to take notice. Your name alone begins to influence decisions, shift calculations, and create hesitation in people who once underestimated you. This isn't luck or reputation built from effort alone. It's the unavoidable consequence of endurance meeting accountability. The ruling doesn't just deliver money, it delivers recognition. People who were once indifferent, who assumed they could delay, ignore, or dismiss you, now have to reconsider their positions. Your existence in their calculations has suddenly become consequential. They might not say it, they might not act openly, but your name triggers awareness, caution, and even strategic adjustment. Decisions that were once made without a thought for you now pass through the filter of your recognized value. What makes this so compelling is how invisible it feels at first. You may notice small changes, a pause before someone speaks, a reconsideration of terms, a subtle acknowledgement of your influence, but these minor shifts are the real indicators of power. The court ruling didn't just settle debts, it altered the gravitational pull around your presence. Influence doesn't always require visibility. Sometimes it travels silently, carried by respect, calculation, and fear of misjudgment. This newfound weight is also a warning to those who try to exploit delays. The same people who held back what was yours now confront the reality that underestimating you is costly. Your patience, persistence, and silent accumulation of leverage have created a presence that cannot be ignored. It's the kind of recognition that reshapes interactions, recalibrates power, and redefines authority without a single dramatic gesture. Your name has become a signal in rooms you've never physically entered, a quiet marker of consequence and respect. That is the true, lasting impact of the ruling. It doesn't just deliver resources, it transforms how you exist in the world, compelling acknowledgement from corners you never expected, and silently demanding that your value be respected. Number 12. The delay filtered out opportunists. Every long wait, every postponed payment, every moment you spent navigating excuses and delays wasn't just a test of patience, it was a filter. Life, and systems especially, have a way of separating those who are truly invested from those who are only there for convenience. The people who lingered around you when things seemed uncertain were not necessarily your allies. They were opportunists, waiting to benefit from your labor, your presence, or your influence without investing themselves. The delay revealed them quietly and ruthlessly. By enduring, by holding your ground through the period of uncertainty, you allowed reality to do what it does best, expose intentions. Some connections that seemed solid vanished the moment patience was required. Some people who smiled while benefiting from your delay quietly slipped away when there was no immediate advantage to be gained. This isn't a harsh truth, it's a revealing one. The waiting period didn't just test you, it tested everyone around you, and those who failed the test are no longer part of the equation. This filtering effect is subtle but transformative. The ruling doesn't just bring money, it brings clarity. The people who remain in your orbit after the settlement are there because they have genuine alignment, respect, or investment in your presence. Opportunists, whose loyalty was conditional, have been naturally removed by circumstances they couldn't control. The delay acted as a sieve, separating convenience from commitment. And the beauty of this is that the shift happens quietly. No confrontation is necessary. No declaration of betrayal is required. Time itself does the work. By the moment your dues are finally paid, the environment around you has changed. It has been recalibrated to favor those who deserve access and exclude those who don't. Delays are often resented, but in this case, they were your greatest ally. They purified your space, clarified relationships, and ensured that when recognition finally arrived, it did so in a context free of opportunistic noise. The ruling didn't just restore what was owed, it revealed who truly belongs in the new reality that has been created. Number 13. The transfer will feel anticlimactic. When the ruling finally comes through and the money lands in your account, it's unlikely to feel like the dramatic moment you imagined while waiting. There won't be fireworks, speeches, or a triumphant announcement. Instead, it will feel quiet, almost ordinary, despite the weight it carries. That's because systems don't operate theatrically, they operate efficiently. The settlement is less about celebration and more about correction. The world rarely acknowledges the waiting, the frustration, or the endurance it took to get here. It simply delivers what is owed and moves on. This anticlimactic nature is part of why the moment can be surprisingly powerful. There's no noise to distract from the truth. What you endured has been recognized in the most unembellished, undeniable way possible. The absence of drama forces you to confront the reality of your own growth and resilience. The money, the correction, the shift, it lands quietly, but its significance reverberates through every system and every person that was once part of the delay. The subtlety makes it sharp, almost surgical in its impact. The lack of spectacle also exposes the nature of influence and justice. Systems, organizations, and people act according to need and consequence, not spectacle. They pay attention when balance must be restored, not when egos demand applause. Your reward, your recognition, doesn't come in a way that feeds vanity. It comes in a way that signals power, accountability, and inevitability. By the time you realize it, the world has already adjusted around you. This moment, quiet as it may be, carries the weight of every delay, every overlooked effort, and every silent victory you accumulated along the way. The money arrives not because it was dramatic, it arrives because it had to, and because the balance of reality demanded it. The anticlimax is deceptive. It's in that quiet, uncelebrated correction that the full truth hits. You've been acknowledged, systems have recalibrated, and those who resisted are now forced to adjust to a reality that can no longer ignore you. Number 14. This isn't arrival, it's reassignment. When the ruling delivers what was owed and the money finally lands, it can feel like a finish line. But the reality is sharper, more profound. This moment isn't an arrival. It's a reassignment. Nothing about the world, the system, or your position stays the same. You've crossed a threshold, and thresholds don't exist to keep you where you were. They exist to move you into new territory, with new responsibilities, new challenges, and new expectations that were impossible before. The money isn't just a settlement. It's a marker that your role, your influence, and your environment have all shifted irreversibly. Reassignment carries weight because it demands perspective. The patience, endurance, and quiet accumulation of leverage that brought you here were never just about obtaining money. They were about preparing you for a reality where the rules have changed. You are no longer operating in the space where delay could define you, where waiting could diminish your presence, or where others' control could shape your outcomes. You've moved into a space where your value is recognized, and that recognition comes with a new set of parameters. The landscape has shifted, and with it, your position, authority, and influence. This is also why the moment can feel disorienting. People expect arrival to feel celebratory, like a moment of rest. But reassignment doesn't pause, it redirects. The ruling and the payment are not endpoints. They are catalysts. Your trajectory has changed, and the world now expects action, decisiveness, and presence commensurate with the recognition you've finally received. The structures that once constrained you will respond differently. People who underestimated you will adjust, often subtly, but always in recognition of your new standing. Understanding this transforms the way you experience the ruling. It's not about closure or comfort, it's about transition. You've been reassigned into a reality that reflects your worth, patience, and endurance. The money is proof, but the true change is in the shift of responsibility, influence, and expectation. Arrival would have left you in place. Reassignment moves you forward, whether the world applauds or not, and signals that the game has changed, permanently and irreversibly. The moment the court rules in your favor, the money moving your way isn't just a financial transaction. It's a seismic shift that reshapes the landscape of your life. Every delay, every test of patience, every invisible effort you endured has quietly built leverage, clarified intentions, and filtered the people around you. What arrives is not luck, not reward, and certainly not a miracle. It's restitution, a precise recalibration of balance, a statement that the system can no longer ignore your value. Alongside the money, influence, recognition, and expectation move silently, demanding that the world adjust to the new reality you've claimed. This isn't the end, it's a reassignment. Doors that once defined you close, new responsibilities quietly land, and your presence now carries weight in spaces you've never physically entered. The ruling doesn't dramatize your journey, but it validates it, transforming endurance into undeniable power and patience into leverage. The cost of delay has finally been paid, both in cash and in consequence, and the truth is clear. You are no longer waiting. You are recognized. You are acknowledged. You are in motion. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that cut deeper than the surface. Like, comment, and share this video with anyone who needs to understand the quiet, powerful shifts that happen when patience meets justice. Your support keeps the conversation alive, and together we explore the truths most people overlook. Stay blessed always.